Well, Marissa, thank you so much for doing this. I guess one thing that I kind of like to do at the beginning is just to get an idea, or let people listening to kind of get an idea of where, like, what branch you're from, how long you were a member for, just a little snapshot, and then when you got out of the WMS.
I was a part of Cheyenne, Wyoming, Zion, which is a branch of Denver, Colorado. And I was a member from October 2014 to December 2024.
10 years. Wow.
Okay. Yeah. 10 years. That's a very common number.
It is.
Yeah. So, and you said you got out October 2024?
December 2024.
December 2024. Okay. So not too long ago at all.
Not too long ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So how are things going right now for you? How's the recovery going? Are there things that you feel like, I'm sure there are, because that's really not a ton of time. And I know, like, really recovering can take years. But are there things that you feel like are still, like, difficult, challenging, that you're struggling with, or anything like that, I guess talk a little bit about that right now, because I'm sure there's so many people, I know there's so many people that'll listen to this who are, very freshly coming out as well.
Yeah. At first it was really hard. It was so scary. I was really, like, fearful, like, am I making the right choice? Just the indoctrination is so heavy that it takes time to kind of deprogram your own mind. So
yes,
when I first left, I was kind of having how do you call it, an existential crisis?
Existential crisis. Yeah.
I can never say that.
Yeah.
But because that was my life for 10 years, and I believed it 100% for 10 years. And it was my life. Every Saturday, every Tuesday, every preparation day, every education, like, to go from being around what as family for 10 years to completely, like, cutting yourself off and stopping. That was really hard, because when I found out, that the organization wasn't what I thought it was for the last 10 years, that was, like, a really big grieving process for me. Like, I was grieving my faith. I was grieving the family that I had, the community, the people I loved and was close to and had so many experiences with. So that was really hard for me to let that go.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like, knowing what it was, I couldn't go anymore. So, I think a big part of, like, the recovery is just, like, what a lot of people say is just research, like, really finding out for yourself what it is. And that kind of helped me solidify my decision to leave and heal and recover. And then, of course, everybody's videos on Great Light Studio, and now Diffusing and the WMSCOG. And everybody's testimonies are so similar to mine. All of our testimonies are, like, we all come from the same situation. So that helped a lot, like, kind of having that community outside of it, like, that we've all been through the same experience.
Yeah. So what was that like, coming across those videos initially? Did you come across former member interviews, like, while you were still in the WMS? And like, at what point did you start listening to stuff?
So the first video I ever came across was Corey's. And I had been to New Windsor on a trip to see the, like, LRE. And so, what
is LRE?
The Last Reformation exhibition.
Like that
They
big
made-
exhibit thing that she helped make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, obviously like I met the pastor over there and many members. So
Daniel
like
Lee.
Daniel Lee.
Yeah.
Yep. And just hearing her experience, because a little before that I was going over some doctrinal stuff, but it just wasn't helping me because I was so indoctrinated. Unfortunately, like I could only see through the lens of what they teach and all the countermeasures and everything. I just couldn't that was really hard for me to, that didn't
Look
really
past,
pull me
right?
out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
But
how I felt too when I first left. I mean, I would ask questions to Jordan because it was so like I knew that everything else was wrong about the WMS, but I'm like the doctrine, like it just seems so sound. And like you mentioned, you're so indoctrinated for 10 years, right? And not only are you hearing it for 10 years, you're explaining it for 10 years too.
teaching it.
And when we go out preaching, people are asking us questions and we're having to come up with answers on the fly, right?
Yeah.
So we're constantly like,
Defend.
people would ask us questions we didn't necessarily know the answers to, but based on how we had been taught in the WMS, our brains would rationalize an explanation, and that's what we would say again for 10 years. So it's like, even though you're like, it's hard when the basis of their doctrine is we keep Passover because it's in the Bible. The word Passover is in the Bible, right? It's hard to refute that statement, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I completely understand.
Exactly. So like I'm still in that process currently. Like I'm seeing doctrinal errors now and kind of working my way into those waters. But definitely at first it was, like you said, more of like the members' like testimonies, because like Corey's testimony, I'm like, I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with like belonging to this place that treats people like that. And I've seen so many times where like, yeah, like humans are sinful. We make mistakes and we have issues, but like an organization run by God herself and that not being corrected is like, that doesn't sit well with me. And so then I started like looking into, everybody's experiences, and I've experienced some things that weren't right, so it's like, you come to see that like something's seriously wrong. Like apart from the doctrine, like this is the red flags you ignored forever are like, oh, this isn't like right. This isn't.
Yeah. Well, those things just kind of, the like you said, having doctrinal arguments against this thing that you've believed for so long, that's one thing, and that has its place and can help. But what you are talking about right now is like beginning to recognize that the organization as a whole is like a very human thing, just filled with weakness, when at the same time it's being constantly propped up as like the one true church. Like this is the place where God is. This is the church that is being led by God herself. And yet you're seeing like, in these testimonies over and over again, just how incredibly human it is, and how, not only is it as corrupt in many ways and abusive in many ways, and just all these different problems that come up in it. Like it's as much as other churches and organizations, but it's even like there's a deeper level of that you begin to see, that it's not just that it has, weaknesses and like every other group, but it's like, no, there's actually just a deeper level of issues here in the way that they treat people. And so that would be something that, I can imagine how that would just be this nagging thing that once you see it, you can't just
unsee it,
forget about it. Yeah, you can't unsee
exactly.
it.
Like I can't, like, and that's like, not only that, but like the lawsuits and stuff. I'm like, okay, so that's what's bothersome, is like there's not only the testimonies, there's like the lawsuits where it's like, well, like, why are we doing that? What, you know, Jesus said, love your enemies, but like the church run by True God is like suing individuals for millions of dollars. Like, I'm just really like confused. And like, not, and then like the history of like, you know, the book written by you know, all the little things that like they don't tell you, or what's even worse is they tell you just enough and they fit it to their like story and their benefit so that you think you know, but then like they don't tell you all of it. So then like,
and it's a matter of when they tell you, because just kind of connecting all that you just said, I mean, they're suing Michelle Cologne. They sued her after she and another person were working on the examining website, which brought to light a lot of the information, such as, you know, them removing chapters from An's original book, right? And so, like, I mean, because I know you joined in 2014, but I mean, the examining site came out 2011-ish, I believe. And prior to that, they were not upfront about anything. Like, when I was, the entire time I was a member, I never heard that there were whole chapters removed from the book. I never heard most things about Ahnsahnghong's life I found out after I left.
Yep.
And so they are, I don't know if they're now more upfront with it, but originally they weren't, until someone else outside of the church made that information known. And then they're trying to be, you know, either be they're being proactive, or they're telling, you know, probably certain people, maybe people who are just asking, but they were never originally upfront with that information until they had to be, in order to be able to you know, try to retain people, because we all know you go preaching, you know, 30 people can get baptized. How many will actually stay? Maybe one person. They lose more than they bring in.
Exactly.
So
yeah. So then, like at what stage were you at when you came across like Corey's interview, for example? Like how many years? I guess when did that come out? That was a couple of years ago, I think now. So it couldn't have been that long ago. But what did that do, like internally? Like how did that affect you? And had you already been kind of having questions and doubts and things when you came across that, or was that sort of like an instigator of that? Like how did that all kind of play out?
Yeah. So it's definitely like the whole 10 years have been a wild journey. But I would say I wouldn't like allow any doubts before. Even if there would be any doubts, you would just throw it away, you know, say that's like Satan, pray about it. But I would say like toward 2022 to 2024, I had a lot going on physically, where it was just like in my own personal life, it was like a lot to handle. And I had already been there for a long time. So you get tired. And I started to slow down a lot and just kind of have boundaries that I never had before. Kind of like, I'll do what I can do. I'm, you know, older now with kids. I will do what I can. I'll make it for service times. I'll make it even for preparation day, even for the educations one time out of the week, other than those. But I would say 2024 in the summer, I started dating and my now boyfriend, and which is a big no-no too, because you need permission for everything, and you know, so. But I started dating,
and they do arranged marriages too.
Oh yeah, I've seen things go terribly wrong there. And I have my own experience, not with arranged marriages, but yeah. So I was never going to be up for an arranged marriage. That's just, and all of that was always backwards anyway. It was always inconsistent. You need to date someone of faith, but don't commit sexual immorality by dating a brother or sister without permission. You need to be matched up. It was all like just so much control and weird anyway. So I started dating somebody I actually kind of knew before as an acquaintance. And obviously he knew what I believed. And I tried preaching to him. I seen him in the park like a year before that, and we kind of had like a rebuttal because he has like a Christian background. I'm like, well, whatever. So then anyway, fast forward, we start dating, and he started like asking me questions. And then my intention, I knew his stance, so I didn't exactly want to like recruit him. I mean, maybe deep down we all want like our person to be saved, but I was kind of like already like, he's not going to believe, like I just need to defend what I believe. And he started bringing up some really valid questions that like I was trying to defend legitimately. A lot of the stuff about like An and Zhang having children and having families, and Jesus came down, and why would God come down and like fiddle around like that?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, God can do it. Like in my indoctrinated brain, I'm like, God can do whatever he wants. Like if God wants to have a family, or like, maybe it was an example for us. I have kids and I need to do the gospel work. I was just lost in the sauce.
To your point though, like that's what I mean. When when the examining site came out about Ahnsahnghong having children, that was their rebuttal. They showed a verse in Hebrew that said that Jesus had to be made like us in every way.
Anyway.
So just as we had just as people on this earth have families, God had, Jesus, not necessarily Jesus, but Ahnsahnghong, right? He should have a family? They suggested.
Exactly.
And so, but this is a perfect example. You didn't know that explanation, but based on what you had been taught in the WMS, that was your rationalization, and that's how we would form stuff and justify stuff in our mind.
Yeah.
But the
Exactly.
problem, though, is that it goes deeper than them just having families. It involves divorce and
that's how they justified.
possible
That's how they
adultery
justified
and
Divorce.
Zhang Gil Jah's divorce, right? That's how they
Yeah.
justified it.
Exactly.
There's divorce on this earth, so
well,
that.
yeah, it's silly. Obviously, there's things like murder and other horrible things that humans do. So does that mean that
Exactly.
they need to participate in those activities too? Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm like trying my hardest to just defend what I believe, right? And still trying to have this relationship. But, and then he's bringing up things like Elohim, kind of like that being always singular according to like the God of the Bible, and we use it as plural. And he asked me to we're like, let's bring it up to the leader in Cheyenne. And I did, and he like gave a sermon about it in front of like the whole congregation, and like said like people are trying to slander against us, and like kind of like in front of everybody, knowing I asked him that. You feel so awkward asking questions and bringing up concerns to the leaders. And they say you shouldn't, or like, people are like, oh, just talk to the leader, like just talk it out. But like they've already created this space where you feel so like, especially when you've already been there 10 years, you feel like you just shouldn't,
Shouldn't, yeah.
So those things were happening. And then he like brought up, I can never remember the book on wrote the actual title for the life of me, Problems with the Bride and the
Problems with the New Jerusalem, the Bride, and Women's
The
Veils.
veil.
Yeah. So we were educated about that book, obviously. And they had like a video about it and everything, saying that like it was for Umsuin, and that at the appointed time he would retrieve the books and reveal the true bride. Just kind of like God can change his mind, and they kind of justify that by saying how God changed with the food regulation. At first, it was just veggies and fruits for Adam and Eve. And then God changed it to Noah's time to be meat. So, like, anyway, they give you this understanding where you're like, oh, okay, I that makes sense. But my boyfriend had pulled up the full version of the book. And then I started to read where, like, On wrote that, like, you're actually mentally ill and delusional if you think Jerusalem's a person. And to believe that there's, like, a female God.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't show that part. You know, like, how about let's show us the whole book that, like, God himself wrote, if he's God. Let's read the whole book. But no. So then I started, like, feeling really weird. And I'm like, why would God write that you're mentally ill and delusional to believe in a female God for, like, a few months or a year later or however long it is to reveal, oh, just kidding, there is. Like, why go so far to, like, talk like that?
Right.
That seems very, like, confusing for God to do that to people.
And Kelsey, weren't there multiple, like, didn't he put that book out, like, a couple times?
Twice.
I feel like I remember he published it. Yeah, so he published it twice. Mm-hmm. And there's just, them saying he planned to take it away after dealing with the issue of Ahnsahnghong is just, it's just empty talk. Like, there's no evidence for that. It's just something they're saying, but there's nothing Ahnsahnghong ever wrote about, like, outside of that book, and definitely nothing inside of the book that suggests that. In fact, the book, itself suggests or very explicitly says that actually the things that he writes in that book are, he calls them the what does he say? The unchanging truth of God.
Yeah.
The unchanging truth of God. Yeah. So he seemed pretty adamant that what he was saying is it something just for a set amount of time that would change. He actually says, what I'm about to write are things that are unchanging. This is God's unchanging truth. Like, there might be changing truth of God, but Ahnsahnghong it's as if he was saying, but this isn't that, what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
Well, and it's just so funny because, I mean, I know we've gone into depth on this one because we all know the WMS, they say that, this was just a special measures law. He was only talking about Ahnsahnghong when he wrote this book, but I mean, he literally says in the introduction, women like Ahnsahnghong, and then he says those who distort the book of Revelation, which those are the verses that they use to justify God the Mother. Yeah. So he's not just talking about Ahnsahnghong. And also, as you said, it's unchanging truth, right? Meaning this is not something it's not suggesting that this is something that's temporary. But also, if Ahnsahnghong is God, right, he should, and if Ahnsahnghong really stole his notes, I feel like he should have did a better job hiding those notes. He should have known that she was going to steal them. He should have did a better job of not leaving those suckers around, right?
Right.
If that actually happened. And then also, if he always meant for it to be just a temporary thing, why did he release the book twice? That's really hard to control the versions when they're physical copies. And also, he did a really bad job collecting those copies because they still exist today. So, which, just, again, all that, all of that has to go wrong in order for WMS to be correct in saying it was a special measures thing. Too many things don't add up that suggest that. They can say that until they're blue in the face, but the evidence and the history suggests otherwise. So
right. Yeah, so that really, like, bothered me, and I'm like, this isn't right. And then then obviously the 3 missing chapters from the Green Book, and I started looking into these things. I think this was a little bit after I broke my collarbone. So,
oh wow.
I started looking into these things, but, like, I couldn't stop going because I was so scared. Like, you can't miss a Sabbath day, you can't miss a third day, like, or else you're going to have a heart attack. That's how you feel, Mm-hmm. Like, I can't skip service because then I'm desecrating the Sabbath day, but then at the same time, I'm starting to look into these things and I'm feeling really off. And in November, I broke my collarbone, which forced me to have a break. And I had surgery on my collarbone in December.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like that forced break where like you need to rest and you can't go gives you more time to kind of think for yourself. And it gave me more time to look into things. And that's when I looked into those things and I was like, okay. And then when I seen Corey's testimony, that's like what did it for me. So it was like, just like I was barely looking into things. I was really sketched out, really scared when I was starting to fiddle with that and look into things while I was still going. And then all of a sudden I broke my collarbone, forced me to take a break. I was like, this is my time to really like look at what's really going on.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it is the truth, like I'll look and it'll still stand. I'll still believe.
Right.
And yeah, after Corey's testimony, I was like, oh my, that hit me more because I'm like, you don't treat people like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, everybody else's testimony after that. And then, more evidence of other things. Like I did the whole series of the Korean cult genealogy and I was like, oh my goodness. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
for WMSCOG to claim that this truth is like from the root of David and it is unique to us and it's authentic about, us knowing that cloud means flesh and the three ages of salvation, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and the fact that there's God the Mother. Those things are like borrowed from Korean cults 100 years back.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, why don't they say that? They don't, of course they don't let us know these things.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's funny because even like the clouds and coming from Korea, that's not something that even in recent history, Ahnsahnghong was not the first to introduce that. I mean, he wrote that. I mean, his original green book, The Mystery of God, Spring of Water of Life, came out late 70s, early 80s. Okay, and prior to that, in writing, I think from like either the it was either the sometime in the 60s or maybe early 70s, Sung Myung Moon from the Unification Church, who was the leader of that one, and who they still to this day believe he is the one who came to fulfill the mission of Jesus, right? And his wife, they call him True Father and his wife True Mother, right?
Yep.
In writing, he has the same things, using the same verses documented in I forgot what the name of the divine, they call it the divine
Principle. I have it in my Amazon cart. I'm gonna read it.
Yeah, and it's look at the chapter. I mean, that book is real dense, but there's a whole section about Second Coming Christ, and it's there. And I know there's an article on the Examining site kind of summarizing it, but I mean, like that in recent history, he's not the first to acknowledge that, and that's pretty specific. He's also not the first, even within the last 100 years, to even talk about Passover.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to talk about Passover, I mean, the Armstrong Church, which is a cult too, they were talking about that long before Ahnsahnghong was talking about that and in writing. And so this is, they try to say that a lot of the teachings come from them, but they either and again in the because the Sung Myung Moon Church, right, the Unification Church, that was big in the 70s and big in the U.S. in the 70s. So imagine if it's big in the U, because cults kind of just with the hippie movement, cults just kind of were like all over, right? So if they were big in the U.S., imagine how much bigger and well known they were in Korea at that time.
Yeah.
And so it's not like a wild thing to say that Ahnsahnghong that he would never have been aware of it, because I mean he probably was. Likely he was.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, again, it just shows like the humanness behind it all when you start to say, oh, wait a minute. I've been told this is all like this grand profound revelation of God that only we have. And now I'm saying, oh, actually you can actually go trace it all back to other origins from these other screwed up, people and cult leaders. And like you said, they're just borrowing all of these things, and there's nothing unique about it. There's nothing special about it. There's nothing about these teachings that points to some grand revelation from God. Right. It's just things that have been rehashed over and over before in these other Korean religious groups.
Exactly. So then when you start seeing those things where you're like, okay, not only is like, so many people going through these abusive situations in their Zions, there's just so many, the foundation of this organization is built off of deception and lies.
Right.
It's like a buffet, the Korean cult buffet. You're going to take what you want and discard what you don't want. And just everything with the church breaking off after On passed away, and the fact that like I realized I could never find evidence of him actually revealing Zhang as mother.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because I thought, on the wedding banquet, or Elijah follows Elijah, Peter follows Jesus, I follow mother. When you actually look at that sermon, it's the whole context, it's something else. Like those little things is like, it's just like cut out pieces that build up what we've always believed.
And there's another one coming after me. She's a child now.
Yep. The deer revelation. Mm-hmm. You think that's enough to believe in it all. The way that they do teach and stuff, it's convincing. And unfortunately, when you don't have any, like, you're not biblically versed. I wasn't biblically versed. I was very open-minded. Like, I was like, wow, this is amazing when I started studying. And 10 years later, you're looking at the pieces that that they hide and that you never seen for yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So like, talk about getting in initially. Like, where were you at in life, and what was it? What was it that drew you in the first place?
Yeah. So I was 20, and I wasn't in the best situation. My dad was kind of struggling a lot with a lung disease. He was dying. Ended up dying shortly after I was baptized, months later. And I had substance abuse issues leading up to those, teenage years. I had my own issues with substance abuse with my then boyfriend. Also with my mom, she's also struggled with substance abuse. So I didn't have love her, but didn't have the best relationship there or trust and stuff. So, and then religiously, I was born into Catholicism, raised Catholic, only went during the Palm Sunday and the, here and there with my aunt. Visited many different churches with friends growing up, but I didn't have any really real biblical knowledge or actual faith in Jesus or anything. I started just being this hippie kind of person that was I'm just spiritual. And even me and my friend kind of messed around with tarot cards. I was just very open-minded to anything. So, October, I remember writing a letter to God because I always had a hard time praying. And I'm like, God, please save me, for my situation. I'm tired of living this way. And unfortunately, or fortunately, everything's God's plan. But I ended up getting approached by my branch at the Walmart parking lot. And she invited me to a Bible study. And I was like, yeah, sure. I was really open to it because I had just asked for God's help too, and I was really vulnerable. And so I was going to the community college here, and I they met me up at the school library, and the first subject I studied was Elohim. It's not even a sermon book study, but I'm sure you might know,
the
Kelsey.
Elohim gods one. Yeah, I know
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. So I was like blown away. I was like, what? We have a mother. Like, which in my situation was kind of what I always wanted, you know, like,
Yeah.
and so my branch, she's Korean. She was like, you want to get baptized? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, let's go. And I was like, oh, right now? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, okay.
They would have baptized you in the Walmart bathroom if they could have. They would have.
Yep. I've witnessed that many times. Your Jubilee, we were baptizing people in bar parking lots.
Yeah.
Wow.
But so I drive her and my friend who I was just in a class with. I was like, hey, you want to do Bible study? She's like, sure. So me and this is classmate, we're on our way to the church to get baptized all of a sudden. She didn't stay for more than like 2 months, but it was a house church here back when it was a house church.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm getting on the robe, I'm being baptized in the bathtub of the house church. And, you know, they're praying in the name of Ahnsahnghong. And
Did you know the name Ahnsahnghong before you were baptized?
no, I don't think I did. It's so long ago and it's so blurry sometimes. But I mean, I remember my baptism and stuff, but I think, of course, I heard it, but I was just so like, okay, cool. Oh, it's a house? Okay. Just kind of
I
like,
hear you. Same thing.
I was a little too open-minded, probably.
I mean, it's just because, like, you know, because I'm sure that they were also very nice, and you know, especially a Korean branch. I'm sure she was extra nice.
She was, yeah.
And I mean, but also, I mean, it's just because I want to ask this too, because so when you got baptized, were you aware of all the commitments that they were going to ask of you?
No,
No, yeah, because that's another theme with cults is that they don't allow. I mean, they don't tell you up front everything that you can expect.
they don't. Yeah, no, not at all. But I was one of those like good fruits. I just wanted to like study, you know? I was eating it up and they loved that.
Mm-hmm.
And
you weren't just a fruit; you were a talent.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, it was just an odd time to join. So we were still in the house church and I got baptized. And then I was late for yoga class, which is a part of my was a part of my school thing, which is also a no-no.
Yeah, yoga was always
Yeah.
yeah.
But anyway, so I started studying a lot, and I brought he's my ex-husband now, but my partner at the time. A month later, he got baptized, and I got pregnant a month after baptism.
Okay.
And the way they made me feel for that was like really bad.
Oh, how so?
Well, I was still so new, so I think they needed to be careful too. But
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
But I was so into it, and I mean, I trusted them with like so much. Like I was a Korean deacon and deaconess. They were like I felt like they were my older brother and sister.
Mm-hmm.
You feel like they're like a, you know, as we all know, like they're a version of father and mother.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they were also able to be a little bit honest with me, but also careful.
Mm-hmm.
They told me that they were going to tell me not to get pregnant because they knew I was with my partner.
Mm-hmm.
So I told them I was pregnant, like, and then they were like, kind of like, oh, we were going to tell you not to get pregnant, like really bummed out.
Oh.
Wow. So then did they give you reasoning for why they responded that way?
You know, I can't like 100% remember the conversation, but whatever the conversation was, or the what they were insinuating was like, right now, like it is time for the gospel work. Like we need to give our all to the gospel work, and that's just like going to be a distraction, and it's going to bog me down. Because I also felt special to them, and they were like, you know, like they had the idea of me to be this great gospel worker.
Were you, when you were baptized, so you mentioned it was in a house, right?
Yeah.
So the number count was probably really small.
It was.
So
And I was already really
yeah.
recruiting people.
Yeah, yeah. So within a month, like of being baptized, like yeah, you were probably like the star to them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that just, that it just shows how, when they get these new members, there's the love bombing and they make you feel like you're so special and
And it just
important to
switches
them.
like that.
Yeah. And you see immediately like, oh, wait a minute. And you don't see it probably as a member when you're in there, but now on the other end of it, you see, wait, there wasn't like this concern or care about me, or like I actually had this special place in their minds or hearts. They didn't love or value me. They valued what I could do for them. They weren't excited about, my life and my flourishing and the good things happening in my life. What they were concerned with was what I was able to bring to the table, how many, butts I was able to bring in and sit down in the chairs on Sabbath days to add more tithes each week. That was their concern. Yeah. And so that disappointment and that, that you felt that they communicated to you, it just shows what this organization really cares about when it comes to its members. And it's not the members and their well-being that they're concerned with. They're concerned with what value the members can bring to them. And when there's anything that comes up in the member's life, whether it's a good thing for that member or not, they don't care. What they care about is this going to get in the way of them benefiting the organization or not? And anything, whether good or bad in the member's life, that's going to get in the way of the member adding value and ultimately, I think, monetary gain and growth to the organization, they're going to label that as an evil, sinful thing, or as something that's like a demonstration of weak faith. An idol. Yeah, they're going to put this label of something terrible and evil and bad and just less than ideal, that somebody who's really truly committed, they wouldn't be doing X, Y, and Z. And
exactly.
Yeah, it's,
and that's what I felt that, and then I felt like, oh no, because I believed 100%, and I'm like, not only that, but 2014, 2015 was the year of Jubilee, and I really thought the world was ending. I really thought we were going to heaven in 2015 because of all the prophecies, especially in the Midwest. It was really intense. But so I felt really guilty for getting pregnant. And then I put it in myself that now I'm going to work even harder to prove I can be a great gospel worker, even though I'm pregnant, as if I wasn't. So, which is hard because I'm a new mom. I'm 20. So I'm pregnant and I'm going around all over Wyoming and all these like days on end educations that, last till 2 a.m, out of town in Denver.
Wow.
Doing the gospel work, which at the time I was super happy to do. I was like, I'm going to do this. We're going to heaven. And then after I had my son, I didn't take a break. And
that's hard.
Yeah, we would still travel all over Wyoming, and we were doing establishing a house church in Casper, Wyoming. And I would be there. I would have to leave my son behind with his dad, and I would be there for days, like preaching all day, and then sleeping. We'd all sleep on the floor at the house we were renting to make it a house church. Crazy stuff. Like like one time I was like the sermon giver in Douglas, Wyoming, which is like a no-no. Like me and another sister I was giving the sermon like the male should do.
They only allow people to do that in very rare circumstances.
Yeah.
That's how bare bones you guys must have been if you didn't have. Wow.
Yep. And so, but I just let all the red flags go by, because I just believed the doctrine 100%. There was a time that when we were short-term preaching, I was missing my baby. And I was looking at pictures of him, throughout, like in between houses or like in between, the preaching locations. And I don't remember how it got back to the leader, but he like rebuked me in front of like all the preaching members. Like, oh, like you're going to look at pictures, like not directly, but directly. Like everybody knew it was me. Like made me
Who
feel
else? Who else? I mean, you're a small group. Who else has a newborn baby?
no one.
Yeah.
So that I was like, like it made me feel like I was idolizing my son, like,
Yeah.
And then there was another time on a Sabbath day that I had a newborn and I took a break. Like I left the church and I went to take a nap and he came knocking. Like, what are you doing? Why aren't you at Zion?
Like at your home?
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
no kidding.
No.
Good grief.
And so I was like,
Wow.
I'm tired. I'm a new mom.
Yeah.
But then I felt bad. And I'm like, better get back there. I'm in trouble.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Yeah, but
so what?
Go ahead.
Well, like these groups, many religious groups, but this one for sure uses fear as like one of its main tools to keep membership up and to keep members in. So, and that's evident by what you were saying earlier and some of your struggles with leaving. But I wonder if you can remember kind of at those initial stages, like was fear a factor in the beginning, like even in those initial times when you were preached to and your motivation to get baptized and your motivation to join in the first place? Do you remember at all like fear being something that was being pushed as like this motivation to, you need to get baptized immediately, you need to start coming now? What do you remember about how fear was involved initially?
Yeah. So I think my very first study, fear wasn't. I think I was just so open-minded and I had just been wanting to know God that like just the study of Elohim, that's not really necessarily a fear-mongering one. And I was just so into it. But a little later, who knows, maybe even one or two studies later, it was the seal of God, where you have to have the Passover to protect you from World War III. And I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta, freaking out. Like I'm so glad I got the Passover. I gotta save everybody. So that was like a big deal. And I started like bringing everybody like I loved, like multiple friends at the time, my sister-in-law. And I seen people after I studied the seal of God with them, they like threw away their degrees. Like it's rubbish. We got to go to heaven. We're going to heaven. So everybody like, what does school matter? And this degree I just went the past 3 years for. So, but I think, I don't know, Kelsey, that this is like unique to the Midwest, but during 2014, 2015, 16, 17, especially 2015 was the year of Jubilee. And that was like the year that all the slaves are going to be sent home, the 50th year, which was the 50th anniversary of the church, right? Yeah, the 50th.
Right.
And so we were supposed to be going home.
That should have been, I think, 2014 because the church started in 64. So yeah.
Yes, it was like that, like 2014, 2015, like year. Yeah.
Because always at the end, like they did this with the 10 talent movement too, where it gets to the end of the like December and they're like, wait a minute, we got to look at the spiritual calendar. Passover is the 14th day of the first month, so you have mother allows you a little bit more time to get action moving, and then it just slowly tapers off and you forget it even happened.
Exactly. Or so 2015, that time period, like we really thought we were going to heaven. Like people were selling their homes. There was a sister who had a home. It was her home that it was hers. She owned it. Well, she went off to a mission in another state, Omaha. And like 10 of us lived in her house. You know how you do like the shared home situation?
Yeah.
Yeah, like 10 of us lived in one house. And we were all like working like day in and day out. Most of us didn't even have a job at that time, just
Mm-hmm.
ready to go to heaven in 2015 because, you know, that's World War III is coming. There's no greater like fear than that, like
Mm-hmm.
to get exactly right and fulfill the mission. Or at that time, we were so, you know, lost in the sauce. We were excited, like heaven's coming.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, bring in everybody we love, hurry, because it's about to be it. And there are
Mm-hmm.
leaders who made it very apparent that, like, this is it. They say they don't. They say, like, oh, that was a mistake from a specific leader. But I remember telling my family, like, my son won't be a year old. He won't see his first birthday, which was
Mm-hmm.
really crazy. But yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was that, like, I believed. And then uh, there was
So
the
can I
fear.
ask can I ask a question about about that time? Because I mean, to your point, right? It's not just, you know, a specific leader. It's like it was something that was taught all throughout all the branch churches in the world about the year of Jubilee. I mean, in Portland, it wasn't emphasized. I mean, we were taught year of Jubilee. We were taught that that's the year that the slaves will be free. Like we were taught those things, but they didn't emphasize as hard, I guess, in my location about that being the very end. I mean, because every year was the very end for a different reason, right?
Yeah.
Every year it was this is probably the last Passover kind of thing. And but like, did they have you? Because you said some people were selling their houses, which I think is just so funny. Because if the world's ending, you sell your house for what? Like, what's the
Yeah.
point? What's it? What? So you can get a bunch of money, but the world's ending. Who cares,
Right.
right? And I can only imagine where did that money go after it was sold. I
Yeah.
mean, I
Mm-hmm.
think we all know the answer to that.
Yeah.
And so, but did they have you prepare in any other way for the end of the world, like, you know, army packs and food?
No, I hear a lot about that from other members, especially 2012, and are like,
Because they did in my locations. They had us physically prepare.
no, they literally just, our emphasis was prepare spiritually. You don't need anything else. You don't need packs and this and that. Like, just prepare spiritually by literally giving your all to the gospel. And then you're like, when Father comes, you'll be full of oil and ready to meet the
Okay.
bridegroom and not the one who fell asleep, the lazy, you know, servant.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so it was like huge. I mean, in this location, Daniel Park was going in. I mean, we would have like educations every weekend where we'd travel to Denver, and we'd have huge seminars at places like Estes Park where 100 or more members would go and spend a weekend there and rent these places where we do, who knows, 15-hour educations on this kind of stuff.
Which in the lawsuits they claim that they don't have studies more than like, I don't know if it was like 30 minutes or 2 hours or something like that. 15-hour
No,
educations.
we
And what
were
were these
all, oh my gosh. Okay, have you ever seen, you know, Sunny in Philadelphia, that guy who's like
yes, with the
with
whiteboard?
the whiteboard and he's like
Yeah, yeah,
freaking
yeah.
out? That was like literally how it was. Like it was like mathematical equations of like dates
Yeah.
and like the like the prophecies of like the completion of the temple and the 1200, I can't even remember them all now. 200, the
It was, yeah.
2300 day prophecy,
Yeah.
and just so many prophecies and like all these things that you're like up till 2 a.m. and you're like, oh my gosh. And like, we're all like overdosing on caffeine pills and bangs. It was crazy. And
Yeah.
Oh, we were
And it
all hooked
probably
on
seems
energy
so
drinks.
profound at
it
that time
was,
too. It probably seems so profound.
it
Yeah.
was,
And
we
now
were
you
losing
look
our
back and you
mind.
see like you said, the Sunny in Philadelphia kind of thing, where it's like, okay, those people
Yeah.
were actually just crazy.
Yeah. And I was a part of that. So no, but
Well, and a lot of those bigger ones, like I don't know specifically the 2300 days, but like a lot of the bigger ones, especially when it comes to like Day of Atonement, seven churches,
yeah,
like that comes from the Seventh Day Adventist Church. That's not something that the WMS made up entirely on their own, or Ahnsahnghong. Like that came from the Seventh Day Adventist Church. And then what church was Ahnsahnghong a part of before he started his own? Seventh Day Adventist
Hmm.
Church.
yeah.
So it's, you
And that's,
know,
we don't know that. You know, we think this is all special knowledge. And, and then it was just so much like mother was being crucified that year because she was in between two pickets of false Christ, kind of like Jesus was in between the
Mm-hmm.
two
Oh my
criminals.
gosh, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, like they showed us pictures of like two false Korean Christs being picketed and her in the middle and her suffering because she's being called a false Christ when Jesus too was in between two actual criminals.
Oh,
And
jeez.
and it started getting really intense because not only are you like at this point in my life of faith, I was so separate from like the world. I was so cut off. Like I was completely deluged in
Yeah,
only
yeah.
this. And I don't know. You're scared of the world and the like World War III is coming and you're doing everything you can to prepare spiritually. But then even inside Zion, like unfortunately it's like, oh, everyone out there is screwed, but we're okay. But even in
Mm-hmm.
the Midwest, it was like even in Zion, you weren't okay because he started coming up with these prophecies that like you were either in the church Isaac, a child of promise, or Ishmael, a
Right.
child of the flesh, even in
Yep.
Zion.
Yeah, they would say that they would also use the example of, two women at the mill or something.
Yep.
One is left, one is left, one is taken,
The
and
sheep
that
and
they
the
were,
goats.
yes, yes. Um,
Yeah, it's just so miserable because it's like you have this underlying like level of dread and fear that you're kind of constantly living in just when you consider the outside world and you're seeing people on the outside maybe just aware of friends or family who aren't in this in group, but then it's like they add on top of that but also you might not be, even though you're doing all these things and you're giving all this time, you could be self-deceived and you could be caught by Ahnsahnghong when he comes asleep and you just weren't doing enough and it's just this miserable existence that you don't recognize it at the time, but it's just
No.
this such unnecessary amount of fear and dread that you just have to live with all the time, and it motivates and drives everything you do in such unhealthy ways.
Your whole reality is like not reality. It's so crazy. And like I remember I ran a house church in Laramie, Wyoming, a branch of Cheyenne for 2 years from 2017 to 2019
with kids.
with kids.
So wait, so you ran a house church, but your husband at the time, he wasn't part of the church.
So no, he was.
Okay,
So
that's what I was going.
2014, I was baptized October. He was baptized, a month later.
Oh, okay.
So we were obviously together before the church, before baptism. And so it's all crazy because in 2016, I did visit Korea.
Mm-hmm.
I did go on the 66 visiting trip. And then 2017 to 2019, we ran a house church.
Okay.
And I remember Daniel Park really pushing like the preach to 7 billion that year. And like, we have to establish house churches. And I felt so like, we have to do this. We have to do this. There's no option.
Mm-hmm.
So I always felt with the guilt that like I pressured my partner at the time to go and do that. Cause that wasn't really like his cup of tea to like be a church leader.
It's a huge commitment.
Yeah.
And when you were the leader of the house church, did you guys pay for were your name was on everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
The rental, you guys were responsible for everything, right?
Yeah.
And did you have to end up, I don't know if, I think it kind of varies church by church, but did you guys have to make the payments for the house yourself? Did you guys were you able to, did they allow you to use tithe money?
No.
You guys were in charge of everything yourself?
Yeah.
Wow.
All utilities, rent, food. Yeah, that's the commitment you make. But in the moment, you're like, oh, that's what father and mother did. in the beginning of the gospel. So I will, like, they dedicated their hard-earned money to the house church, to the members, and like we do that, like with like willingly, and it's not easy.
So then what would, like, when people tithe, what would that money be used for? If it's not used for anything related to the house?
Yeah.
Or would it just be sent to Korea?
Yeah. So like I was taught that the tithe envelope is sent to Korea and the offering blue envelopes were sent to the main church of your area. And what happens to those tithes are distributed to where it's needed, like third world countries that don't have chairs, the churches over there. That's what I was taught.
What about the members who are renting the houses out and got to pay for that? Because I imagine, were you guys full-time gospel workers, or did you have other jobs?
Oh, we had jobs. Yeah, we had to have
Oh,
jobs
okay.
because we had
Yeah,
to
yeah.
pay rent. Yeah.
Right.
So we're
right.
full-time workers, and your life outside of work is only house church and those kind of duties.
So after the certain amount of years, did the church move to an office, or did someone else take over?
Oh, well, so 2017 to 2019 was really hard. That was really hard for me because my partner at the time's family lived in Laramie, and there was people who were baptized, a cousin, and she found out about the book, the Ahnsahnghong one, and I had to defend it with all my heart with what I knew and what they taught me. And she felt it was just really disheartening, to try and do that.
Right.
And
because you had never seen the book.
No.
Nobody had ever really. I mean, well, it depends on which Ahnsahnghong, but I'm assuming is it the Ahnsahnghong book about a legend, or no, the one Ahnsahnghong wrote about?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because members, they never saw the book, but you have to defend it.
Exactly.
While they've seen it and you haven't.
Exactly. So it's
challenging.
I feel like but it is challenging. So unfortunately, 2019, my partner at the time fell back into substance abuse, and obviously you can't run a house church like that.
Of course. Plus, how do you run a house church with kids too?
It's hard. And 2019, I had my daughter. So now I'm a mom of two, which was, And so I told the pastor at the time what was going on personally, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
With my ex, and he told me to give the sermons of the house church.
Oh wow! Even though technically it was a male able to do it, but he wasn't because he had fallen into.
Yep.
Wow.
So then we planned to move back to Cheyenne, close down the house church when we moved back to Cheyenne. And then 2020 happened, COVID. And they put a big, I noticed on everybody's testimonies that was a good opportunity for people to like take a step away and really like critically think for themselves and like evaluate. And that was how a lot of people were able to exit. But
yeah, for sure.
For me at the time, I was really going through a hard time personally with my situation. Even they put on an emphasis in 2020 that like it's the sifting time. Like this is going to be the real test of faith, like if you really had faith or not, because you're only doing home worship. So are you just going to fall away, or like where is your true faith really been in? So that scared me too. I was scared throughout 10 years. I'm like, am I going to make it? I need to so then I did the 70 subjects again, like all, over Zoom with all the members, and like really put all my focus again into the gospel work online, like 70 subjects, really making sure I keep home worship accurately, not to be the one that's like sifted out because I want to make it. I don't want to fall away.
Mm-hmm.
While meanwhile, my home life is falling apart. I mean, like,
and your home life is the church too.
Exactly. I'm in a domestic violence situation. I'm going through all these things that you just ignore because you're like, and that too, like when you're in a domestic violence situation, women already have like kind of like that the weird cycle and messed up thoughts. But when you're also in the cult, you're like, if I just practice mother's teachings like a little bit more, things will change. Or this is my thorn, this is my cross, this is what I deserve because I sinned in heaven. So even like you stay in situations you shouldn't just logically stay in because your mind's so twisted.
Wow.
Right.
So you mentioned that, and I know you've already discussed a lot of red flags, but you mentioned before that you ignored throughout your time there, different red flags. So I'm wondering, like, what you're talking about them now and seeing issues that you recognize now, but I'm curious, like, what were things that you maybe stood out to you that you can remember throughout your time there, where things that happened or you experienced that caused you to step back and say, wait a minute, like, that's not right, that you maybe buried down or pushed under the rug? What were some of those things?
Well, now when hindsight's 2020, you look back and it was a lot. I think that there's some personal things too that I wouldn't want to discuss on the internet, but things having to do with like them encouraging you not to have children early on. Children are such a burden. Abortions are encouraged. Certain things like that. You may not be forced, but the coercion and just the way you feel about children was really hard in the beginning. They're not really treated well. And then later you're gaslit. I remember years later, they came out with a video showing like, oh no, we love children. We all have children. The church loves children. We have happy homes. We have children material now. It was that same video where they're like, we're not racist. We love, we have churches all over the world. And you're like gaslit. And you're like, okay, that's not what I remember. And that's not my experience. But for example, if you are a new member now in 2018 or 2019 who didn't experience those messed up things, they don't know. They're not being gaslit because they're like, oh yeah, everybody is saying like these bad things, but this church does love family and children and they love my children. And you're like, yeah.
Question, when it came to like the fasting, right? What were you taught regarding kids and fasting? Especially babies too, because your kids were born in the church, right?
Yeah. There's this huge, like, it's not like a competition, but you feel like all the moms' faiths are being compared. Like, you're almost faithless if you don't guide your children to fast. So I did guide my children to fast. I don't remember doing it as he was a baby, like on formula or like breastfeeding on formula, but really young, toddler.
Yeah.
And they don't get it. You're like, just hold on a little more, buddy. Like, we're almost there. After second service, we're going to eat. But yeah, and then speaking as a parent, the fear. So there's fear for yourself. There's fear inside that you're not enough. But the fear you feel as a parent is so unreal. Because you learn that, like, usually when they hit a teenager, they need to have their own faith now. They can't just go because of mom and dad. So you worry, is my child going to have enough faith in father, mother to stay in Zion and not go to hell?
Right.
So then you indoctrinate your children as much, we call indoctrination now, but in there, you try and feed them with, like, even my son was learning sermon book.
Yeah.
He's now 9, going to be 10 in August. But like the fear you feel that they will not remain is so scary. So you're like, they need to fast and they need to, be perfect in service and like all these things that are just so unrealistic for children. And that, like, now looking back, I'm like, is God really like this?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as a
Yeah.
parent, you're doing what you think is the absolute best for your kids. I
Yeah.
know to other people, to other people, they might be like, they might have a different interpretation, but in reality, I mean, you're doing what you felt. I mean, not just you, but I mean, just other parents in that situation.
Yep.
They're doing what they felt was absolutely best for their child's life, physical and spiritual life.
Exactly.
And it's a it's tough to navigate because when we have the days where we're fasting, we're all in the church at the same time. You see exactly who is fasting and who's not. And among the parents, I mean, if your kid is sitting there drinking water or juice or eating a snack while everybody else and other kids are forced to fast, I mean, it's not the kid that's gonna be looked down upon, it's the parent
Yep.
that's gonna look down upon. And they say things like, it's according to your faith.
They do. That's
So
exactly what they say.
yeah, and even though you're not, maybe because when I was a member, parents were legit told, make your kid fast for sure. But as more and more scrutiny came out, I'm pretty certain that they stopped saying that you have to do this and more according to your faith. But according to your faith means, is there a way of saying you have to do this?
Exactly. Because if it's spiritual abuse, it's like manipulation,
Yeah,
like according to your
yeah.
faith. So if you don't, that kind of shows us what
It
kind
means
of
you
faith
got
you
bad
have.
faith. Yeah.
And they would make it very apparent if your child's not fasting, if your child's going to sit there and drink a juice or a water or have a snack, so get them away from all the other kids, because it's like
Hmm.
you're going to tempt them, and your child's not fasting, and then you
Yeah.
feel like, okay, let me grab my child and hide in the corner so my child can have like a cracker, which I made my kids fast. That wasn't, but yeah,
Yeah. I mean, it's just how it is. And because they don't necessarily have to say something directly to, like, for that to be considered forcing. Like, coercion is a
exactly,
form of forcing. If they're going to have everybody shame you for giving your kid a snack, then you're not going to want to give them a snack. That's
exactly.
their influence is pushing you to act the way they want you to act and do what they want you to do. That's a form of force.
And it's just, you stay in all these weird, uncomfortable, even abusive situations because you believe the doctrine 100%. And you're like, well,
Yeah.
I can't leave.
Where
So,
else will I go?
and that's like, those are the red flags that I see. And then, Edgar, I seen his testimony too. And like, when you really do never feel peace, like,
Mm-hmm.
I was telling you guys about like the prophecies about like inside the church, you're either Ishmael or Isaac.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember sharing with my branch, I was in the house church actually at this time. And I was like, like she was asking me to like we were like kind of like sharing fragrance. And I was like sharing with her like what it was like running like being a house church leader. Like, I was like, I feel like I get to feel father, mother's like sacrifice. Like, I'm picking members up and like working, and then like only like focusing on like feeding, I was just giving her like kind of like a fragrance of like what that's like. And she was like, oh, you sound like a child of the flesh,
Oh my gosh.
like Ishmael.
Why?
Because it
Why
was
did she say that?
like do instead of just like being saved by like a promise, because our
Mm-hmm.
Isaac's mom is Sarah. So we're really just
Mm-hmm.
only saved because of mother, whether we
Mm-hmm.
do good or do not do good, which is also not true. But
That's 100% not true.
so you just never feel like, and so like she straight up called me Ishmael, and that's like my branch, like someone I always like looked
Yeah.
up to, like as like my big sister. And I'm like, cool. And like, I wasn't like, I honest to
You
God
should have
wasn't
been
trying
like,
to
you should
boast.
have been like, you're my branch. If I'm Ishmael, what does that mean you were? Like, a good, what was it, like
Uh,
a good tree
good,
cannot bear bad fruit.
bad
Yeah.
fruit. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's true, because I did it, but I was just like, Seriously, like I wasn't even trying to boast. I was just like trying to like share, and then I'm like, okay, well, I'm Ishmael. Like, so like you just never feel peace, and it it's just it is wild. Like I remember, you know, you have to ask permission for everything in your life, which is also like a red flag that I'm in my 30s now. I don't need to ask to go on vacation. I don't need to ask you people. That's not normal. But in
Yeah.
the cult, it is. You're frozen. You can't do anything without.
Right.
And I remember early on, I was taught by the leader that there's a verse in the Bible that says like, if you're like a kind of like, if you're a heavenly soldier, you need to report like heavenly soldiers shouldn't be involved in civilian affairs. I think it's like Paul or something. But he used that verse to be like, basically like we are heavenly army. This is like almost like Zion's a family, it's a business, it's a military. In the military point of view, like mother's heavenly commander, then there's like general assembly, then there's the overseers, then there's the leaders, branch church leaders. It's like a military. So if you're a gospel worker and you're a soldier, you shouldn't be involved in civilian affairs, which is worldly things. You're a gospel soldier, you need to report to your commander what you're doing. What is your plan? Where are you? Why aren't you here today? So in that way, like you really do, at one point in my life in there, like I report everything, why I can't go that day. And at one point, there needs to be a legitimate reason why you're not going that day.
Right.
Not because you don't feel like it. How dare you?
Right. And like even if it's something like a doctor's visit or getting something on your car fixed or something like that, their expectation is that you schedule that around the preaching meetings.
Yeah.
Like if you're scheduling that during a time where there's something going on at the church, then that's they're gonna look at you like something's up.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I think that's like a lot of our story when we're young, where we go in really young and then we like are in this state of like we're there constantly. We never have time to ourselves. You almost never really get out of it.
Right.
And by the time we hit like 30, we're tired. Like I'm a mom of 2. Like I will do what I can do. And yeah, you still give the sermons that's like be here more. I will be there when I could be there. For the last 10 years, I've been busting my butt. Like, and I think that's like the beginning of the end for me is like, I'm like, I'll do what I can. And
You're
if God doesn't like it, exactly.
So was there, I mean, beyond just kind of being so exhausted after 10 years of all this, were there other factors contributing to that? Because I guess what I'm asking is like going from, you know, the fear that was driving you to do everything, to go above and beyond as much as possible, to like even that willingness to say, you know what, I'm going to do what I can. And whether they're happy with that or not, whatever, like that has to require a significant, like kind of a mental shift.
Yes.
So what was it that caused that shift where you were even able to say, you know what, I'm just going to do what I can. And if that's not good enough, kind of that's their problem. It sounds like you kind of transitioned into that attitude, which is quite different than how you'd been living for many years.
It was so different. I think it was a very gradual transition, but 2022 to 2024 was by far 2 of the roughest years of my life in my my marriage. I think things with like domestic violence and substance abuse on top of like trying to raise my kids and then being in this place where they're requiring so much of you. It's like, I lost my mind there for a second. Like I cannot do this. And so being in the cult, it's like being in an abusive relationship in itself, like with a narcissist. So like having a double whammy, it is mentally like inflicting. Like it's like,
There's no escape.
yeah. And so I was starting to mentally check out because I'm like, I can't handle this. In 2020, like all I did was focus on the gospel. All I did was, and ignored the fact that my home life is falling apart, because if I just practice mother's teachings a little more, hold on, we'll just make it. And you can only ignore issues for so long. And it's almost like it's always put back on you regardless. Like, well, just because you believe in God doesn't mean your situation's going to get better. Or, well, you're not doing the best you can, so maybe that's why your situation's like that. You always feel like in this twisted state of mind where it's just like,
right. But then telling you also your faith, you're saved because of mother's promise.
Right.
Not anything you do, but
so you're in this constant state of like twisted thoughts.
Yeah.
It literally is enough to drive a person crazy. And being in a abusive relationship, with my ex and with the cult, it's like I was starting to mentally check out. And but I still had that fear in me and still believed in the doctrine where I'm like, I still can't miss a Sabbath day. I still can't miss a third day. And then what kept me there more was my kids more than myself. I'm like, I can just take a hike. I could be done. If I go to hell, I go to hell. This is all really honestly too much for me at this point.
Right.
But like, because I had kids, like that's what made me feel like, oh, I can't do that to them.
Right.
Believing in it 100%, or believing in it still, regardless of all the yoke that we have that's supposed to be so light is so heavy. I'm like, I have to stay for them. And then I finally, was officially divorced. I had a protection order in April of last year. And then in the summer, I was finally just by myself with my kids. And then, officially divorced. So then I had just the cult. And
down to one narcissist.
Yeah. And so along with a lot of other crazy stuff that's happening personally, like with protection orders and violations and stuff that's like ridiculous. But that's a whole nother story. But I then met my now boyfriend in the summer, accidentally, of course. Wasn't ready to like date or anything, but that happened. And I think that happened for a reason, for sure. Because then all this started to unfold. Not at first, not the very beginning, but, July, August, September, October, November, we started really getting into those conversations like hard, where we would like butt heads big time. Like, no, like, I was trying to defend, but he's like, but this, like, and we'd have those conversations, but I was still going. I'm like, I'm not missing a Sabbath day. Like I couldn't. And then I think it was just like the collarbone break that forced me to take a break. And even when I still kept service after I broke my collarbone in a sling before I had surgery in December on it. And one of my close sisters said there was a sermon right after I broke my collarbone that said, if you, by general pastor, if you do things like if you're not doing God's will, like God will like give you a wake up call and even like have to hurt you.
Oh my gosh.
Well, like something bad might happen. I know, right? And it's always like, oh, great timing.
I mean, of course, she's telling you that why? Because what happened? You broke your collarbone.
Yeah. Well, so General Pastor had that sermon, and then me and her were like very, very close, even on a personal level, to where she was like, "Did you see that sermon?" Because she knew, like, I was dating. Like, she's like, "This is why that happened to you." Because
you broke your collarbone because you didn't. Oh my gosh.
Because you're not doing God's will. You're not focused.
Wow.
And even at that time, like, I was just so mentally checking that out that I was like, I don't care. Like, okay. All right, sure. And then, when I went into surgery and really was like on recovery and healing is when like I started diving into like everything, the rabbit hole. Like of that, like 15, 20 testimonies and everything. But
yeah, it's interesting that it was really the WMS that got you to a point of even being willing to look into doctrinal stuff and doing the research. Like, it was kind of this pairing of, it sounded like earlier you said if somebody had come along, a couple of years, 2-3 years before you had gotten to this point of just exhaustion and said, hey, look at all these issues and look at all these problems with X, Y, and Z, it probably wouldn't have done very little to affect you. But really it's thanks to the WMS and just their
heavy yoke
being assholes that to their members, that gets them to the point where they're actually willing to listen to the supposed slanders online, and to actually take in the information that's being said and able to actually listen to it. But yeah, it wasn't one or the other, but it's great that you had somebody like your boyfriend now who's able to, and I'm curious where how he had the information he had, that he was able to ask questions and point you to things that, actually made you think. Because a lot of, the average person on the street who runs into a WMSCOG member preaching to them isn't going to have a clue of how to respond. And they might have responses to things, but it's not going to be a response that's going to do anything to make the members question. It's going to be things that they're totally 100% prepared to answer. So to be asked something or pointed to information that actually makes you think,
yes,
that he must have had some sort of experience with the group before. So go ahead.
Yeah. So on that, you mentioned like 3 or 4 years back, if people would have been coming to me with like these points and stuff, which they had from the beginning of my life of faith. I had friends and family members saying like, it's a cult. And I even had an intervention done on me back in like 2014
really?
with a past friend, which now we're friends again, more like we talk, but a past two friends and her dad, who is a Baptist pastor, and my cousin, Andrew, they assembled an intervention at my cousin's house. And I was like full-fledged indoctrination, like the whole lens. Like, I'm like, you celebrate Christmas, you celebrate like all these things like that. And then I'm like, you don't even know the lesson of the fig tree. How can you tell me when he's coming back a second time? I was just like a fireball of like, cult, and there was nobody was going to stop me. I was already like, lost in the sauce completely. So like all those years, people would point out to me stuff and I would just, boop, nope. No, don't give it the ear a day. My mom would say like, hey, can you read this article yet? I can read it, but it's not going to do anything. So like, hot, like, like that defense, like I'll read it, but nothing's going to change my mind. They're God. Completely like not penetratable at all,
Yep.
And so you're right. Like, thanks to like finally all these years you get worn down, like life happens and like you're older and you're like, you just can't keep up like you did when you were 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, And then I think I do believe God exists because like, you're right. Like I met my boyfriend, but my boyfriend a year prior to us even ever going on a date, I had preached him in the park. And I was like, we were like rebuttaling each other. And he like wasn't like a like going to church or anything like that, but he was raised Christian, he's biblically versed. He went to Christian camp as a kid, and like, as an adult, he hadn't like, like he had like knowledge of the Bible. So when we were in the park, we were like rebuttaling each other and like, like you need like about specifically mother. And he's like, well, did the Jews die if they didn't believe in Jesus? And I was like, yeah. So same thing's going to happen to the Christians if you don't believe in mother. And we're like, really like,
wow,
like, like respectfully having an argument. And I was like, well, anyway, cause I knew him. He was my banker from years prior. So I was like, all right, bye,
Okay.
Jake. Like I hugged him, and which is also, but like I knew him, so I was like, all right, well, anyway, if you change your mind, you know how to find me. Because we had each other on LinkedIn too, because of like the business setting we were both
Mhm.
in for our jobs. And then like prior to that, he was preached to in Walmart at like 11 o'clock at night by some two males who were like, really wrangling him. And he's like, all right, he's like, I'm just buying soap at Walmart. I've had enough, like, so he had like a couple prior experiences with with Church of God members, like me specifically.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So then fast forward to when we start dating, he already knows this about me, but he still like, we still decided to date. And I was very much like, this is my faith, so like don't even try, and like
Yeah.
yeah. And so he would be like, why don't you invite me? And I'm like, why would I invite you? You don't believe it. Like, like I feel like I shouldn't invite you. One, because I shouldn't even be dating. So like that's
Yeah.
awkward in itself. I don't want to invite you.
Because then you're like, I mean, you have to go to the church. You have to tell them the situation, and it's going to be a fight, and
Yep.
Well, and for so long, for 10 years, I was a house church leader at one point. I was a unit leader. I was an example. So I
Yeah.
also had the constant fear for the last 10 years that I was going to be a bad example.
oh, that's yeah.
That's another fear. Like everybody's
Yeah.
looking at me when they shouldn't, because I'm a
Yeah.
human, but not a, you know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
feel like you have to set a good example.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Oof.
I think that for him, he already knew about the church, but he didn't know like the nitty gritty. And then like
Yeah.
he went on all of our actual church websites to learn exactly what we believe from our point of view. Like
Oh,
the
that's
WA.
funny.
Yeah, so like cuz he's like trying. Like he wants a
Yeah.
relationship with me, and he's like, "Okay, what does she
Right.
believe?" Literally looking into all the studies, Elohim, Jerusalem Mother, like everything. And then
Yep.
he goes and digs up the dirt. And he's like, okay, like, and then he presents that to me. And see, I'm rebuttaling all his biblical stuff. Like, oh, Christ can't die
Mhm.
again. Oh, that means the second
Mhm.
death, like a fire. On can die the first death
Mhm.
because that's his body. Like, I did all like
Right.
however many countermeasures there are.
Right.
You're like,
Right.
there's an explanation for that and for that and for that and for that. And
Right.
we would like argue.
Yeah.
But then he brings up to me this like other stuff that I can't explain because they don't teach us that. How about you
Right.
teach us why on said you're delusional and mentally ill if you believe
Right.
that? Why don't you tell us that stuff? So then when someone actually does research on our church like they should do, and they
Mhm.
come to us with that, we as defenders should know how to defend it.
Yeah, exactly.
You
Or let
feel
us
thrown out
read
to
the
the
book
wolves.
ourselves, you know? So,
And that's the biggest thing for me is like I feel like research is so important.
mhm. Mhm.
Like, first of all, we didn't have what we have now with all the Great Light Studios videos. Thank you
Right.
so much for that. And like all the work like people are doing to like just make things known. It's not like
Mhm.
slander. It's not
Mhm.
rumors. It's just here's the
Mhm.
facts. Here's what it actually is.
Mhm.
See it. If you still want to belong to that place, go ahead.
Yeah.
Like if I want to be a cult member because I do still love people there and I want to go, I will. But
Mhm.
like the problem is it's not what we're taught it is. It's the one true
Mhm.
church, it's true God, God is in the flesh.
Mhm.
Like that's the problem.
Mhm. Mhm.
And like
It's the us versus them.
yeah, and I think that like I was talking about it with somebody, but it's like if you want to belong to anything, you should be able to do your research. If you want to belong, if you want a new career, research it. If you want to move
Mhm.
to a new town, research that town, see if you want to be a part of it.
Mhm.
Why shouldn't we be able to fully research everything about the World Mission Society Church of God and make an informed decision whether we want to be a part
Right.
of it or not?
Right. And that's what I was trying to point out earlier was that when you got baptized, right? You were not made aware of every single thing the church teaches or what they require from you. Like that's why, like, whether or not somebody like decides to stay or leave in the church is no reflection on my life. But my goal is just to educate people so that they can make that informed decision. Because I'm never gonna be I'm not gonna be the one tearing this church down. The church will do that to themselves, and they lose more members because of themselves than
Exactly.
anything that we do. Because I think a lot of people, like, they get to, I mean, I was certainly in the same case as you. Like, I was so burned out that's what pushed me to leave. Wasn't because of the doctrine or anything anybody said online. It was because
Yeah.
I was burned out, and then I started to look online, and then when I, like, taking a short break, like
Yes.
just a week break, that's when my brain was able to reset a little bit, and so I could actually internalize what I was reading and read it objectively. And so yeah, I mean, they don't give you that breathing room when you're a member.
Not only that, exactly, but like I'm sure you remember, Kelsey, the mother sacrifice plays, the part
Oh
one,
yeah,
part two,
yeah,
part three. They make
yeah.
it very apparent that we sinned in heaven and we tempted each other, like brothers and sisters
Mhm.
tempted each other to eat the fruit of the
Mhm.
corruption, the knowledge of good and evil.
Mhm.
And we disobeyed mother, and that's what got us kicked out of heaven.
Mhm.
So then I remember specifically the play in part two. There's two sisters going, let's just look on the internet just once, which is
Yeah.
just like they were in heaven. Let's eat the fruit of corruption just once.
Yeah.
And then the sister's like, but mother said don't go on the internet. And the sister's like,
Mhm.
just once. I'm curious. Let's go see what's on the internet.
Mhm.
So then as a member who fully believes, you're like, I'm not going on the internet. I'm not
Yeah.
going to
So
disobey God again.
what happens to that sister in the play?
They eat the fruit of corruption by going on the internet, and they like spiritually die.
Really?
Well, like that's what
Yeah.
it's depicting, and you're like, I don't want to
Yeah.
spiritually die. I'm not going on there. I'm going to disobey mother again, like I did in heaven.
Yeah.
Keep the internet away from me.
And it's so funny.
Why do that?
I know, and it's so funny because like I don't know if you've heard this, Jordan, but I've heard enough people now say they've never even heard of Great Lakes Studios until the church brought it up, saying don't
Oh.
watch them, and that's what made them like, wait, what is that? And then they go and look, and then they leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's just
Thank you.
Again,
Thank you, WMS.
I know. Thanks for the free
Yeah.
publicity, I guess.
It is kind of funny though. At the same time, all the members who do, like, I mean, I'm still every day I'll get a handful of new comments from members, just saying you slanderers just don't understand, and you're doing just what the Pharisees did 2,000 years ago. So you have those members who are obviously maybe they're new or something, or they just, I don't know what's motivating them to come to these videos. And at least click on them long enough to like write out a comment. But there's many members who are obviously just not, they're ignoring that, command of mother at least.
Yeah, because it's, like I've talked to many members since I've left here and there. And there's been a few that are like, just talk to the pastor. Just talk to him about your concerns. And like, sister, we can research. And I'm like, oh, can we? I think that if you're an actual loyal member, it's very apparent that we're not supposed to research.
Yeah.
That's what's in the play. So you could tell me I have the freedom to research, but that's actually not what it really is.
Basically, it's like you have the freedom to kill yourself spiritually. Like if you want to die spiritually, like you sure.
Go for
like
it.
we're not
Your choice.
You can do that. Like yeah, it's just so the gaslighting is just so incredible.
Yeah, and I talked to one. I love her to death. Still love her. Regardless, but she gave an example that was like, well, yeah, if you're going to go skydiving, you that's a risk. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, of course you're going to die spiritually when you go on the internet, because you're going to see what they don't want you to see, and then you can't unsee it, and then you can't bring yourself to go back.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It's of course you're going to spiritually die. You're going to be like, oh, what the heck is actually going on here? That they've been trying to get me not to see for 10 years, because I'll be eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and mother's watching me on the internet be disloyal. Right. When actually it should be like, go ahead and look at what you want to look at. This should come from her herself. Look at what you want to look at. Our truth will still stand if it's the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just so fragile. So the WMS is so fragile. It's so afraid of light being shown on it. It's so afraid of facts. The WMS is terrified of facts. It's terrified of evidence. It's terrified of its own history. It's terrified of Ahnsahnghong's history. It's terrified of people actually intelligently analyzing the doctrine and having any sort of like biblical scholarly understanding when looking at their teachings. It's just terrified of all these things because it's just this fragile, insecure, little narcissistic child of an organization that claims to be this amazing, profound thing, but is just not. It's just a
whole lot of gaslighting.
It's just not. It's not what it says it is. But I know, Kelsey, we're gonna have to wrap this up soon. And so speaking of these members coming online in the comments, and this will be my last question, and then Marisa, if there's anything else that you want to make sure to talk about, we'll give you time to do that. But one of the questions that we get all the time from both current members and former members is like this kind of, if it's from a former member, it's sincere and it's like a sincere question kind of asked in desperation. But then on the other hand, the current members are asking it in sort of this challenging, like, here's a question you can't answer. And that is, where else would I go? And that's kind of been brought up multiple times in this conversation. So that's probably the biggest question I've found that, like, and you expressed that you have the same question too, that members have, is like, they might be experiencing terrible things. They might be seeing all these issues left and right. They might even recognize that certain doctrinal things don't make sense, but something about the story that the WMS tells about Sabbath and this kind of us and them mentality that it paints in such a strict, like, extreme way of like that outside world will kill you and everybody out there is controlled by Satan and all this garbage. But it produces this question that just permeates this group and all the members. That is, where else would we go? Like, I might want to leave, but where else am I going to go? And so I'm just wondering, you having come out, and I know you're still kind of, it's fairly fresh and you're kind of walking through all that. Like, how do you think about that question now? Or maybe if you had somebody come who's been involved with the church and they ask you that, like, I guess what would you say? What do you think would be a helpful way to help members or former members navigate that question?
Yeah, I think that's all of our question, because we're like, Christmas and like Sunday worship and Easter. Like, you really feel like the WMSCOG we've been taught has the only truth. And I think that what helped me was realize that, like, well, there isn't complete truth in this place. There's lies and there's deception. And if there's some sort of lies and deception, then how does that make it the complete truth? So then really, like, I remember being a member and being like, oh, we better stay just in case, because if it turns out true, then that's better than the alternative. But really, when you find out that a lot of what the church's foundation is built off of and a lot of the actual history is false, then why stay somewhere that's false anyway? And I think a big thing with us, ex-members, current members, is like the church claims to have all the answers when really and so like when you don't have all the answers, we're like freaking out and screaming, well, what's all the answers and who has them? But like, that's not really the point. Like not everybody has the answers.
Yeah,
and
that's such a good point.
Yeah, you have to live with that and you have to get used to that, and it's uncomfortable at first because you're like, who has all the answers, and give them to me. I need all the answers.
Yes.
And you
Yeah.
need
Oh,
to,
that's such a good point. Yeah.
Yes, I like
yeah,
that.
I was freaking out. And it's like, no, you need to sit with yourself for a while and just learn to be
Yeah.
okay that like you don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
And it's going to be uncomfortable, but it's a part of the healing process for sure. And like, I think that everybody, you know, it has a different, everybody's healing process and their journey when coming out. It all isn't linear. Everybody has a different like path they're taking, or, you know, maybe their healing process is faster or slower. But one thing for me is when I realized the lies and deception, what kept me in for so long, even toward the end, was like for my children. And then when I realized, you know, like Corey's testimony and the abuse and like, you know, do I want my children there? As a mom now, like, do I want my children to, like, do I want them to be a part of that and them to go through these things? Like, no. So I may not know the truth or know exactly, like, don't expect yourself to have to go into a certain doctrine or a certain church. Just let yourself heal and process everything that you've just went through for the past 10 years or 6 years, and just little by little do your research. That's been a big part of my healing process, because I'm like, I don't even know how to pray now, because it's like almost like habit. Like I go to pray to like father and mother. Who do I pray to? Like just give yourself some grace and do whatever it is that's gonna help you heal. For me, a big thing has been reading like Stephen Hassan's book, Releasing the Bonds, doing more research, but also just doing what makes me feel peaceful and happy that I didn't get to do when you're enslaved.
Yes.
That's a good word.
I just shared. I just shared in the the private the chat here on the screen. I don't know if you guys can see that, but that's this is a comment that I got just today from a member, and it says it's funny how people will slander, but will never show you where to receive the forgiveness of sin and eternal life. And so I responded to this person the way I respond to this question a lot, which is kind of what you're saying, you know, that, you know, it's kind of like if you see somebody like on the street drinking gasoline, like they have this water bottle and it has this label on it that's like a piece of paper taped to it that says water, and you go up and smell it and it's gasoline, and they're like, oh no, like there's trustworthy source gave it to me and said this is water, and you see them drinking it and you're like, no, stop drinking that. And so when the WMS asks this sort of question, it's kind of like saying, hey, you shouldn't tell that guy to stop drinking gasoline until you have a bottle of water to offer him at the same time. And it's like, well, I mean, no, like do whatever it takes to get them to stop drinking that. Like that's the main thing. Yeah. And then of course you're going to want to help them get to, you know, a healthy source of water, help them find whatever it is they're actually looking for here. But yeah, it's just that, like you said, they groups like this just make you think that they have all the answers, and then they make you think that that's the right way. Like that's the only way to function in the world, is existing as a person who has everything figured out. You have an answer for everything. Yes. Which just go watch like a documentary about space or something and see how small and insignificant and tiny we are, and how we know next to nothing about this universe that we exist in. It's like most of it is a mystery to us, even to you know the most researched science. It's just we know very little, and so the idea that you can't leave until you find another place that has all the answers is just such an erroneous assumption to begin with. It's just such a false, you have people have that question. Members have this question because they're still believing WMS propaganda that makes them think that this is a legitimate question to begin with, and it's not. Nobody has all the answers. Go look at, I guarantee you, go dive into any like major religious group or structure, and you're going to find issues, you're going to find flaws, you're going to find, incorrect things. And so it's just, you're not going to find what you're looking for there because you're not supposed to. And so, but I think, I think members need to realize, like you're saying, and they have this, the WMS has this saying where, they'll talk about, if you had a piece of meat and it had one little tiny, piece of poop on it or a piece of poison on it or something, would you eat that meat? No, of course not. Well, look at the WMS. Like, can you be honest and tell me you can't find at least one thing that's wrong with it? If you can,
poop on it.
Yeah, one thing with poop on it. Yeah.
Well, and
I mean, honestly, yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
I think that just goes to show like how much anxiety they put in us. Like,
yes, exactly.
When they're like, where do I go? Where are all the answers? It's like, okay, calm down. You're not, like, you feel like you're going to die. Like, I remember up until the last point, I'll never forget this sermon that Zhang Gil Jah gave. And she said, like a sister tempting another sister, like, it's okay to miss a Sabbath service. Like, it's okay to miss, like, that's like sin. You're tempting them by saying like, you can't miss a service. So I remember like the anxiety I felt to even miss one service. I was like, I can't like skip a service and then go back. Like, I just have to like skip it and never go back because of like the crazy anxiety you feel there. And like, in the same way, like we all have that anxiety where it's like, where do I go? I'm going to die. I'm free falling. Like, I don't have all the answers now. Like, you're not going to die. It's okay. Like, do your research. Like you said, Jordan, like if there's a speck of poop, then why go? Why? That's what we claim in the World Mission Society Church of God, but they're no different. So then why go to keep drinking the gasoline? Just stop and
Yep.
Give yourself
like you said, get used to that feeling. Get used to that feeling of not having all the answers because you're not supposed to and you're never going to. Exactly. And if you think you have all the answers, you've probably wound up in another cult-like situation.
Yes. Please, let's not do that.
Yeah.
One cult per lifetime.
That's all I can handle. But I definitely I do believe in God. I believe that all this has transpired because of God, the broken collarbone, the everything little by little. But I think that our journey after leaving a cult, it is shaky. It needs to be baby steps, and that relationship with God needs to be nurtured, and you shouldn't jump right back into something full on and you're vulnerable. Like, we're at the point of vulnerability again, where we just need to take the time to heal. So.
Yep.
Yeah. I need to jump, guys. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. But thank you so much.
No, I just want to say thank you so much, Marisa, for sharing your story. Man, I don't know how you did that. I mean, because just the being a house church leader is so hard. You have 2 kids you're managing. You're having a husband who's having issues. I mean, you're young. I don't know how you did it. I don't know how you did it. I'm so glad that you're able to leave and enjoy life now. And I mean, not only did you change the trajectory of your life, you changed the trajectory of your kids' lives too. And I know those kids are probably really small now, but later they're going to really appreciate that. And even before, you were doing what you thought was best for your kids, and it's hard to describe how difficult it is being a parent in the WMS, to those who've not been in there. But I mean, you made such a good decision, and you drastically change those kids' lives. So they're lucky to have you as a mom. So
thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you guys. Thank you for your time too.
Yeah, of course.
Take care.
All right. Thanks,
Bye,
Kelsey.
Bye. Once I figure out how to hang up, guys, hang on. I got it. Okay, bye.
Bye. Well, I think that's all the questions I have, but is there anything else that you wanted to make sure to share before we wrap it up here?
I think I pretty much said it all. I want to encourage everybody just to really be okay with having the freedom to research. Because I didn't feel like I had the freedom to research for so long. And now that I have, wish I would have done it sooner. But I think that everybody has the right to look into what they want to give their life to. And I think I seen an interview that you did that showed a girl who was only in the WMSCOG for like 3 months. And she had really good like trust with her dad and brother. And she trusted them and she was able to get out early. I think unfortunately for a lot of Church of God members, they don't have that rapport and trust with family. So then they end up putting all their trust in the cult. But I think my best advice is, even if you don't have that, be your own advocate. Look out for yourself and do yourself a favor and research. And again, like even if you are thinking about joining this place, do your research. And if you still want to, you still can. Or if you're a current member and you do all your research and it sits well with you and you still want to belong there, you still have that choice. But don't feel bad about researching what you're giving your life to, what your weeks to, your days to.